Yes.
This is only the second sick day I've used all year so far.
I actually don't have many real sick days, so I feel like it's a good trade-off.
I only get 5 a day. I only get 5 ones I can actually use a year. Like, usually I'm already burned through mine, but because of sinus infections and whatnot. But this year I've been extremely fortunate.
Well, that's going to be fun when we cut this up. So the beginning of round 2 is just you talking about your sinus infections.
Sorry.
No, it's just funny. But, yeah, we are underway here with round 2. We've got Scotty Wright on the left. He is playing Esper Control, as the Wright brothers are wont to do. And his opponent is Troy King, but Troy has eschewed his normal red-green Devotion deck and is playing Junk Constellation. So Scotty with a turn 1 Thoughtseize here. No, this looks like a turn 2 Thoughtseize. Revealing 3 lands in Elspeth, and I believe that's Doomwake Giant, which effectively is a wrath if you can set it up properly. Let's see if you'll bring that up on the old card viewer. Yep, Constellation trigger, one-sided wrath potential. It's also a 4/6 for 5, which is not nothing to laugh at in and of itself. I believe both these players are 1-0. In fact, they are. So both of these guys are 1-0. So there is a Brain Maggot from Troy, which is effectively a Mesmeric Fiend for those of you old school players there. It will effectively duress something here. Actually, can Brain Maggot hit non-creatures or creatures? Let's find out together. Yeah, it's non-land, so effectively Thoughtseize, but if you can deal with the Brain Maggot, you get it back. It is a 1/1, so you can get in some minor damage, but it does trigger Constellation, so not a bad top deck in the late game. And important, too, that the cards that trigger Constellation have a relatively low mana cost so that you can chain them together, as mentioned for Doomwake Giant. So Troy's really thinking here. This is because Scotty's hand is incredible. It's a Supreme Verdict. Is that a Night Veil spec? No, it's a Dissolve FNM promo. Hero's Downfall, Aetherling, Elspeth, and a Watery Grave. Yeah, Driftwood 352 in the chat mentioning he's seen someone cast Mana Blooms for 0 twice to clear out a board with Doomwake Giant. It's absolutely the kind of plays you can see. Mana Bloom's actually pretty good in this deck. I think they do run that in these decks, do they not? Do you know? I know it's an unfair question, but I know you read a lot of content.
I think I've seen it in a couple lists.
It might be one of those things that's too cute, but it is very good. We are going low-tech this round with giant dice for life totals, as I forgot to plug my iPod in early enough, and it ran out of battery already in round 1. So Scotty shocking himself here with the Watery Grave, I guess deciding if he wants to Verdict. He does, so he's going to get his Dissolve back and just pass the turn. So let's see how Troy rebuilds. What he wants here is a Eidolon of Blossoms. What he doesn't know is that Scotty has drawn a Detention Sphere to go along with the Hero's Downfall he already knows about. So there is a Courser of Crufix, reveals a Swamp on the top, so we'll go ahead and play that. Which will put Troy back up to 19, I think. Reveal off the top is Godless Shrine. So Caryatid paired with the Courser, then send the turn back to Scotty. We know he's got a ton of business, just has to figure out how he wants to go about it. So he just passes back, chooses not to pull the trigger on the D-Sphere. He's leaving Dissolve mana up. There's a Vraska on top for Troy. Question in the chat about getting only the audio feed. We should be fine here on this end. None of the traditional problem signs are showing, so might want to just refresh there. And there's the downfall that we knew about at end of turn to clear out the courser. It's going to take me a while to get used to that FNM promo dissolve. It does not look like a normal dissolve. It looks more like a promo Nightveil Spectre, especially in Scotty's deck that plays both.
Still got to come across one.
The promo?
Yeah. Just so I have one of each.
Of every FNM promo?
From when I started last year to...
Sure. You mean you don't have FNM promo Swords of Plowshares or Brainstorm?
No.
So, Scotty plays a Godless Shrine tapped and then sends the turn back here. We know he has both an Aetherling and an Elspeth. But the Doomwake Giant beats start for Troy. Troy either choosing not to play into Dissolve that he knows about, or Troy playing a Vraska tapped as land. That is not allowed. Can you slide the dice down a little bit? Thank you. Alright, so I was only way off on the life totals. 12 to 21. So Scotty plays a Temple here, so he doesn't have a 6 untapped mana, so he doesn't have the option of Elspeth or Aetherling. Troy continues to beat in with the Doomwake Giant. He's just going to make Scotty find an answer to that before he commits anything else to the board. And Scotty's in a pickle here too, because as long as Troy does not cast that Vraska, then Scotty is forced to at some point deal with that 4/6. And if Scotty taps out for Aetherling or for Elspeth, then Troy can just untap and immediately vindicate with his Vraska here. So Troy's actually in a pretty good spot here. Scotty starts off his turn by scrying cards in the bottom here. And there's a D-Sphere on the Doomwake Giants. So Scotty finally finding enough mana sources that he can play a removal spell on the Giant and leave up counter magic here. So now Troy's going to have to start feeding stuff into the dissolves he knows about. He knows about one of them, I believe, but Scotty has 2. Tapping the Caryatid for mana. 3 mana for a Courser? No, Underworld Connections. I don't know if Scotty can allow this to resolve. Now, Troy has not played a land this turn. If the contents of Troy's hands are if those 2 cards are exactly land and Vraska, untapped land and Vraska, then Scotty potentially get blown out here. No, he had 5 mana to cast Vraska anyway, so that wouldn't have mattered. But Scotty deciding he'll let the incremental card advantage happen and try to stabilize another way. Cannot deal with Vraska. Which is probably correct. Actually, it's not even close now that I think about it. Vraska would kill the D-Sphere. Then if Scotty played Elspeth, he would just kill the Elspeth. So Troy goes to work digging through his deck with Underworld Connections at the end of Scotty's turn. Untaps. Looking for business here. There's a Brain Maggot. Just going to do a pretty good job of forcing the issue here. Now he's hoping he can get the dissolve out of Scotty's hand. The problem is that there's going to be another dissolve, and he's not going to be real thrilled about it. So Scotty's going to dissolve that one, see if he can bait Troy into playing the Vraska this turn. Troy is probably capable of sniffing this out here. But we will see how it goes. So still waiting on Troy here, deciding if he wants to feed that Vraska into a counterspell. He's going to think, if Scotty is dissolving the Brain Magnet, one of two situations is in play. Either he's dissolving it because he figures the Brain Magnet is going to hit it anyway, so just to get the scry value out of it, or he's drawn another counterspell. But Troy has decided he's going to feed a Courser into potential counter magic. That resolves, revealing the top card, which is, I believe, another Doomwake Giant. So Scotty taps 4 for a Verdict. No, Jace, Architect of Thought. We'll see where he wants to go with that one. So -2, we dig for cards. Jace and 2 black-white lands. So Jace versus the lands. Jace is the answer. In return, Troy going to dig for another card here. So it feels like Scotty's got all the answers here, but having to play around that Vraska has been a real chore for him. Alright, and I'm back. So Troy trying to find a way out of this. He needs to get to a point where he can cast 2 threats a turn. He's going to start his turn by clearing out that Jace. He likely expects that there's a dissolve in Scotty's hand. That's why he didn't play the Vraska last turn. But he needs to get to a point where he can cast a must-answer threat, follow up with the Vraska, or cast the Vraska to clear away for whatever he wants to resolve after that. So there is a Doomwake Giant. Scotty just chooses to let it resolve. Did he draw another dissolve? There's a Jace we knew about. Leaving Scotty's hand, I believe, at 2 dissolves, an Elspeth, and an Aetherling. So he's got all the goods he needs here, but like every control deck, the most important resource is mana. And despite having 8 lands in play, is actually kind of short on mana. So Jace -2 revealing Rev, Verdict, and Hallowed Fountain. It's Rev versus Scotty now left to choose between card draw or mana and removal. I think I'd take Hallowed. Yeah, I think I'd take Hallowed Fountain and the sweeper here. And Scotty's just going to pull the trigger here. At 8 life, does not feel like he's in a good enough spot that he can take another hit. So we know Vraska is going to come down. The choice is whether or not we're going to blow up that D-Sphere or we're going to blow up that Jace. First, Troy, probably correctly, is going to dig with his connections and see what his options are. So here's 2 mana for Brain Maggot, Elspeth, Aetherling, or the 2 dissolves. So obviously I think we take the... What do we take here? I think we take the Aetherling? Does that seem right?
Take one of his threats. I mean, you know you're going to be playing for counter magic.
We're not taking a dissolve, that's for sure. Is it Elspeth or is it...
I think you gotta take Etherling, because Elspeth can be dealt with. Etherling, once it hits the board, it's nigh impossible to get rid of.
Yeah. And then Troy does in fact choose the Elspeth here. And there is Vraska. Are we going to blow up the Jace? Are we going to blow up the D-Sphere? That's the question. I think we're obliged to blow up the Jace here. Because blowing up the D-Sphere and getting your Doomwing Giant back isn't necessarily that great. Plus, if you're going to do that, then I think I take the Aetherling. Because the Constellation with the Doomwing Giant is perfect at answering the Soldier token. Scotty draws a Temple of Silence. He's going to start off by playing that and shove a card to the bottom here. So we know Aetherling is going to make an appearance. And there is Aetherling. And then passes back here. So Troy is in a pretty good spot here. He has resolved his Vraska. It is going to survive. He's successfully shoved a Sphinx's Revelation to the bottom of Scotty's deck. The problem is he has no way of winning the game. He needs a win con, so Vraska goes upstairs. Draw a card with Underworld Connections. Find another Underworld Connections. Put that on a Temple of, what's the green-white temple?
Jeez. Plenty.
Temple of Plenty. We always put it on two separate lands. Why do we always put it on two different lands, George?
Put one on two separate lands.
Underworld Connections always needs to go on two different lands. Why?
Because Pithing Needle.
Exactly. Weird aspect of Magic. Pithing Needle makes you name the card that has the activated ability. I believe they... So the question is, Vraska's delayed trigger, if he attacks and kills it with Aetherling, can he blink it in response to the trigger so that it doesn't die? Yeah, and as I would have thought, and it turns out that the destroy target creature is a trigger, and you can't respond to that trigger by blinking. Aetherling comes back in. It's considered a completely separate permanent that doesn't know anything about Vraska. And so it does survive. So Vraska down. So based on that, then maybe we should have taken the Aetherling. Alright, we're going two cards deeper here with Underworld Connections. What are we trying to find here? That's the real question. Well, we found a Courser of Crufix. Revealing top card is Immutavault. I think we've already played our land for the turn. It's probably a small mechanical mistake. Do have 5 mana open, but Troy knows that Scotty has 2 copies of Dissolve in his hand, so should just decide what card he wants to feed to it. And honestly, I don't know how Troy can beat this Aetherling at this point. So Aetherling unblockable. Scotty doing some quick math here. Only needs to pump it 3 times to make it a 2-turn clock. Probably should do that. So pump once. So Troy takes 5, goes down to 9. Scotty playing on the 3-turn clock here. Wants to leave up double Dissolve. She could have done otherwise, but playing a little cautious. Can't necessarily blame him. He's got this game pretty much under wraps. I'm trying to think what Troy could draw that would get him out of this. a red source and fireball, maybe? Not even that's not even good. Cabal Therapy naming Dissolve and then something good? Main deck Pithing Needle, or... What's Aetherling base is a 4/5, right?
Yes.
So even sudden death wouldn't work. Split second wouldn't kill it.
Somebody mentioned Crows and Grip in the chat.
Crows and Grip wouldn't do it either because it's not an enchantment. I think this is that situation where Troy tries his darndest to find a way to win, but just can't. Not going to be able to do it. So there's Mutavaults loading up and serving in. Scotty willing to trade with his own Mutavault. Goes down to 6 off the damage from the Courser. Interesting here, Scotty not willing to untap his Aetherling there, leaving up double counterspell as well as a blink. So Scotty playing around literally everything. Stifle. That's a good one. What's more important is that you can stifle the come into play trigger, so it's just always gone. That's perfect.
Really? Like,
yeah.
When he blinks it out, you can stifle it?
No, you let that happen, but then when it returns to play, you stifle that one.
Because it's two separate sentences.
Returns the battlefield under its control. Yeah.
Ah, okay. That makes sense.
There are two separate triggers there. Or one's an activated... Well, no. Yeah, one's a result of an activated ability. It's just the resolution of that activated ability, and then the other one is a trigger that triggers the beginning of the next end step.
Probably why Stifle will never be standard legal again.
Oh, Stifle's not a good... Stifle's a horrible magic card in terms of making the game no fun for anyone. So it will never be standard legal because it probably shouldn't exist. It's also like that interaction we just described will never happen because like no one will ever be playing that in Legacy or Vintage. All right, Troy's had enough, so they moved to the sideboards. I'm going to take a brief break, and then just to warn everybody, July 4th, 2 Fridays from now, we will be off, as we will be. I do have some holiday plans. So Troy trying to break even here, he shocks himself with an Overgrown Tomb to cast a turn 1 Thoughtseize, 5 lands, ultimate price, and a Dissolve. Probably take the Dissolve here, I would imagine. Well, I enjoy the delightful flavors of a Diet Pepsi, which I drink because there's nothing better to drink in the store's case. We watched Troy shock himself yet again for Mana Bloom for 1. So it's the second turn of the game. Troy is already down to 14 and has not been attacked. Meanwhile, Scotty is just content to play land to go. There is a Temple of Plenty. Troy's going to think about this one. Not an obvious shove or keep either way, so I can't see what it is. So Troy doing a good job of shielding it from us as well. Whatever it is, he decides to send it away. We'll see if Troy can take advantage of that Mana Bloom, and he cannot, but he can net a Supreme Verdict. Scotty draws into a Jace, Architect of Thoughts. So Scotty's hand, 5 lands, Jace, Dissolve. So play an untapped island here likely. Leave up counter Magia. Just like we drew it up, Brain Maggot Beatdown commences. 1/1 Earwig gets in there. We'll see what Troy wants to do here. He's going to cast an Eidolon of Blossoms. Scotty's somewhat obliged to counter this, if for nothing else, just to scry, because there's a land on the top of his deck. He needs to send it away. It is instead a Sphinx's Revelation, likely the best thing it could be. Here is a Jace Architect of Thought. Troy preemptively looking to bin his Brain Maggot, but doesn't need to. So Jace ticks up, rendering that Brain Maggot powerless. We'll see what Troy can do. Mana Bloom does return to his hand, because we did use the mana. Looks like we're going to rebuy it for 1. Excuse me. And Troy misses a land drop, just passes the turn back. Scotty draws Elspeth, so Scotty's going to play Hallowed Fountain tapped, tick up his Jace, sit back on Dissolve, and then slam an Elspeth next turn. It took Scotty about 30 seconds longer than I did, but he comes to the same conclusion. He in a pretty good spot here. Really, this play only gets blown out by Troy having exactly Vraska. Here's 3 mana for a Courser. Nope, Underworld Connections. I'm going to put it on his untapped land. Scotty deciding he doesn't mind. And then just passes it back here. So let's see if it's Elspeth time. Scotty not casting that Dissolve kind of indicates to me that he's not going to cast the Elspeth this turn. Jace is a Mutavault, Temple of Enlightenment, and Basic Island. Scotty takes the 2-card pile, deciding the Mutavault was not important enough to take it by itself. Scotty decides, in fact, to pull the trigger on Elspeth, Sun's champion, so Planeswalker hits the board, makes 3 1/1 soldiers. And Troy digs with Underworld Connections. Remember, he's at 13 because of the Shockland and Thoughtseize and Underworld Connections damage. So Troy tapping 4 Eidolon of Blossoms. That will cycle. And just passes back. So now Scotty well and truly ahead. He's got a Sphinx's Revelation in his hand. He's got a counter spell. He's ahead on board. He's got 2 active Planeswalkers. Both go upstairs. 6 tokens. And we're 2 turns away from this game being over. Troy needs to find 2 answers to Elspeth. So he needs to find either 2 copies of Vraska or 2 copies of Hero's Downfall or 1 of each pair. So there's a Brain Maggot that could potentially clear the way for a removal spell. In response, Scotty is going to rev for 4. We'll put him up to 22. And it's just going to net Troy has a choice between 4 lands, which he can't take, a Duress that's freshly drawn off the top, and a Jace Architect of Thought. So Constellation triggers. Troy finds a Temple of Malady. Scries a card, leaving it on top here, so we've got a fighting chance. As Scotty's hand is basically blanks. Just lands and a replacement Jace. Was it a D-Sphere? D-Sphere is very good here. D-Sphere on Brain Maggot's pretty good. So both brain maggots go away. The cards come back, allowing Scotty to cast Duress, revealing Golgari Charm, Thoughtseize, Mistcutter Hydra, Doomwake Giant, Hero's Downfall, and a Gianni Mentor of Heroes. A lot of goodies in Troy's hand. It's interesting because I kind of feel like Scotty's obliged to take the Golgari Charm, which is kind of weird. He doesn't necessarily have to, he just has to take one of either Golgari Charm or Hero's Downfall. But he does have counter magic up still. So I guess you take... What do you take here? I don't figure he cares about a Johnny, because if Troy decides to cast a Johnny, he just counters it, time walks him, and then kills him. I think he might have to take... Well, he might have to take the Thoughtseize here. Yeah, I think that's the play. I think we have to take Thoughtseize. We have to counter the Hero's Downfall. Troy casts it. If he casts the Golgari Charm for -1, then you just let it happen and slowly rebuild. No, he takes Hero's Downfall. So minusing Jace, revealing Thoughtseize, Temple of Silence, and Deicide. Deicide pretty good these days. Kills everything. Connections, Eidolons, D-Spheres, various gods. There's another Thoughtseize. Doomwing Giant goes away. Scotty does not have counter magic up, so Golgari Charm is going to reset his soldier position. I think Scotty's fine with that, in reality. Or we can Golgari Charm the D-Sphere, get back our brain maggots, clear Scotty's hand out, but then we just lose to all those tokens. We have to do something to get Elspeth either off the board or out of ultimate range here, though we're quickly just losing to these 9 tokens by themselves. Sometimes you don't need a Planeswalker ultimate, sometimes 9 1/1s are still good enough. Elspeth is a heck of a magic card, that's for sure. So Troy considering his options. We know the contents of his hand, save for the card he drew this turn, is Golgari Charm, a Johnny Mentor of Heroes, and a Thoughtseize. And then we'll see if he drew anything more lucrative than any of those. A Johnny is basically useless at this point, so that is probably not the play. Scotty does not have Dissolve mana up, so Troy cannot pass the turn back and let Scotty untap, that's for sure. Well, I say that, and then Troy immediately casts a Johnny Mentor of Heroes. In the chat correctly pointing out that the draw for the turn was the Mutavault because he drew that and then played it. So we have perfect knowledge of Troy's hand here. Now how is he going to get out of this with this Johnny? You can dig, but then we're just going to ultimate Elspeth and then swing back, right? Maybe I'm missing something. So, ticks a Johnny up. Impulse. Look for a creature or an aura, I believe. He finds a Mistcutter Hydra, which he cannot cast. Well, he can cast it for 1, I guess, but what value is that? Oh, I missed the Mana Bloom. That's why this line is okay. I missed the Mana Bloom. So Scotty starts to rebuild here, taking Elspeth up to 8, making 3 more tokens. And now Troy, not playing just against Scotty, but playing against the clock. He needs the win here just to get a draw, as there's no way we're resolving a third game with under 5 minutes remaining in the round. Temple of Silence, leave a card on top. There's a Dissolve shuffle to the front of Scotty's hand. The chat correctly mentioning it's a creature, aura, or planeswalker. I did neglect planeswalker, which is pretty big neglection on my part. So Aetherling shows up. We've got 2 blue mana to blanket. Troy up. Ooh. My clock is wholly incorrect here, as we have gone to time. There is a Banishing Light just in time to answer the Elspeth, but I don't even think it matters at this point, as Troy is 5 turns away from drawing this third game, which means he will lose this match 1-0-1. But he's going to play it out as we move into turn 1 here. Johnny ticking up. Put 3 counters on the Eidolon. And attack Scotty. What does Scotty want to do here? Block and blink? Block and blink, I think, is the line. And there is a Mistcutter Hydra, played defensively. But I think the Aetherling is a perfectly fine 2-turn clock here. So start off with the Watery Grave, make our Aetherling unblockable. And Troy's not going to make Scotty go through it, so we can move the round along. So Scotty's Esper controlled, that gets the better of Troy King and Junk Constellation. Troy had a lot of goodies, but just could not overcome the counter magic of Scotty's deck. So Scotty moves to 2-0. Troy drops his first match for the night. We're going to step outside.